Okay, welcome back. What we're going to talk about today is how to find ideas and opportunities. In previous classes, we talked about are entrepreneurs born or made, and we covered some of the characteristics of that. And then we talked about the difference between business owners and entrepreneurs, and basically that we felt it was the attitude or the mindset that an entrepreneur or the business owner took to his enterprise or his business. And then we covered some of the characteristics and the behaviors and the issues that entrepreneurs run into. And what we're going to do now is really try to go over ideas and say, well, where do ideas come from? Where do ideas for entrepreneurs come from? So to start with, let's watch this little video clip that does a pretty good job of talking about ideas and where they could potentially come from.
For the past 5 years, I've been investigating this question of where good ideas come from. It's the kind of problem I think all of us are intrinsically interested in. We want to be more creative, we want to come up with better ideas, we want our organizations to be more innovative. I've looked at this problem from an environmental perspective. What are the spaces that have historically led to unusual rates of creativity and innovation? And what I've found in all of these systems, there are these recurring patterns that you see again and again that are crucial to creating environments that are unusually innovative. One pattern I call the slow hunch, that breakthrough ideas almost never come in a moment of great insight, in a sudden stroke of inspiration. Most important ideas take a long time to evolve, and they spend a long time dormant in the background. It isn't until the idea has had 2 or 3 years, sometimes 10 or 20 years to mature, that it suddenly becomes accessible to you and useful to you in a certain way. And this is partially because good ideas normally come from the collision between smaller hunches, so that they form something bigger than themselves. So you see a lot in the history of innovation, cases of someone who has half of an idea. There's a great story about the invention of the World Wide Web in Tim Berners-Lee. This is a project that Berners-Lee worked on for 10 years. But when he started, he didn't have a full vision for this new medium he was going to invent. He started working on one project as a side project to help him organize his own data. He scrapped that after a couple years, and he started working on another thing. And only after about 10 years did the full vision of the World Wide Web come into being. That is, more often than not, how ideas happen. They need time to incubate, and they spend a lot of time in this partial hunch form. The other thing that's important when you think about ideas this way is that when ideas take form in this hunch state, they need to collide with other hunches. Oftentimes, the thing that turns a hunch into a real breakthrough is another hunch that's lurking in somebody else's mind. And you have to figure out a way to create systems that allow those hunches to come together and turn into something bigger than the sum of their parts. That's why, for instance, the coffee house in the Age of the Enlightenment or the Parisian salons of modernism were such engines of creativity because they created a space where ideas could mingle and swap and create new forms. When you look at the problem of innovation from this perspective, it sheds a lot of important light on the debate we've been having recently about what the internet is doing to our brains. Are we getting overwhelmed with an always connected, multitasking lifestyle? And is that going to lead to less sophisticated thoughts as we move away from the slower, deeper, contemplative state of reading, for instance? Obviously, I'm a big fan of reading, but I think it's important to remember that the great driver of scientific innovation and technological innovation has been the historic increase in connectivity and our ability to reach out and exchange ideas with other people, and to borrow other people's hunches and combine them with our hunches and turn them into something new. That really has, I think, been, more than anything else, the primary engine of creativity and innovation over the last 600 or 700 years. And so yes, it's true we're more distracted. But what has happened that is really miraculous and marvelous over the last 15 years is that we have so many new ways to connect and so many new ways to reach out and find other people who have that missing piece that will complete the idea we're working on, or to stumble serendipitously across some amazing new piece of information that we can use to build and improve our own ideas. That's the real lesson of where good ideas come from, that chance favors the connected mind.
Okay, so that's a pretty good clip on, where ideas come from, and it gives you just an overview of where ideas come from. But we're actually going to also dive into some things that are just a little more specific, and we're going to talk about a couple of ways that you can help generate ideas and where you can find ideas as you are looking for things that are businesses that you may want to pursue or start, that are in alignment with your passions. So there's this article by Scott Anthony, and it's called The 5 C's of Opportunity Identification. And I read this and thought, wow, it really does have an impact on how entrepreneurs can think about ideas. And what he states in this article is that the entrepreneurial process has kind of 4 phases, right? And, if we think about this, it just makes logical sense. First, we have to ID an opportunity. We have to find some sort of, business. We have to have an idea for what we want to do. Then we want to do some basic market research. We want to do some evaluation of this idea to say, is it a good idea or is it a bad idea? Can we try to, figure out from a research perspective, yes, this idea makes sense to pursue and to take risk going after. Then we want to develop some sort of business plan, some plan to get us there. We have to pull together the resources, whether those resources are financial or we need some people on our team to help us, or we have to create websites or, marketplaces or a retail center, whatever it is. We have to do some sort of required resources. Then we have to manage this business that we've created, or management of the resulting enterprise. So that really is the entrepreneurial process. It's really pretty simple. You find an idea, you develop a plan, you gather your resources, and then you manage whatever it is you've done. And if you think about that, you do it all the time. Every time you have to cook a meal, what am I going to cook for dinner? Oh, I know, I'll cook, doesn't matter what, steak. Let me develop a plan. I'm going to do steak, I'm going to do potatoes, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to do the potatoes first because they take longer. Then I'm going to do the steak. Then I'm going to do this. Then you get your resources. Do I have my meat? Do I have my potatoes? Do I have everything I need? Then you have to actually cook and manage the whole enterprise. You might have the potatoes in the oven going at the same time you have a steak on the grill, and you're going to have to walk back and forth. But you have to manage this enterprise. It's the same thing for business. But when you think about it, the opportunity identification and evaluation, that is the most difficult task, not only for you, the entrepreneur, but for any investor. Trying to figure out, is that really a good opportunity? And what is the upside to the opportunity? That is a very difficult thing for investors. Why? Because it takes time. You have to do research. You have to get into it. It takes effort. You can't just sit there and hope that somebody walks up to you and goes, that's a great idea. It takes some sort of money, and you have to have a good temperament to do this. You have to be patient. You can't expect to have an answer in 30 seconds. But the other reason it's hard for investors, especially for entrepreneurs who are talking to investors about potentially putting money or helping with a venture, all investors have different backgrounds. They all have different tastes. They all have different experience. They all have different amount of risk levels they're willing to take. They have different amount of capital. So somebody being asked to invest $10,000, if they're a billionaire, they may not think about it quite the same as someone being asked to invest $10,000 if their total net worth is $100,000. They have different amounts of capital. They have different business experience. I mean, if someone was to come up to me and ask me about investing in a business that has anything to do with clothing or design, I just have no experience there. I have no foundational background to base any decision making on. But if you come up to me and ask me about investing in technology or information technology, especially if it's a creation of a software system, man, I'm great there. I've got all sorts of knowledge and information because I've done it before. I've built software companies. I've built an IT consulting company. And so my experience is different. So it allows me to have more input, a better solid foundation. It allows me to figure out that I can evaluate risk better because I have different background. And so that's something to remember. All investors are not created the same. So context. One way, this 5 C's, he's basically said there's these 5 C's of opportunity identification. And basically it evolves around just asking, what is a customer trying to get done? It zeroes in on the frustrations that motivate purchases. Instead of thinking about, what is the motivation behind why someone buys a Porsche versus they bought a Porsche? In other words, they bought a car. Why buy a Porsche? Why buy a Volkswagen bus back in the day? What made people buy Volkswagen buses versus, buying station wagons? What was motivating the purchase? Was it it's a counterculture kind of statement? Was it makes me feel cool? Was it that if I buy a Porsche, it has something to do with my status and it makes me feel good? What's motivating the purchase? Because it's not just getting from point A to point B. Because if it was the only thing motivating a purchase was getting to point A to point B, then someone would buy the most reliable, dependable, affordable car they could find. So there's other motivations that are in behind why people buy things. So these 5 C's of opportunity identification are very much modeled after the 4 P's. And if you think of what the 4 P's were, they were price, product, place, promotion. Some of you that are marketing majors or had marketing classes understand this. These 5 C's kind of work the same way. So let's talk about them. So the first one is circumstance. In other words, what is the specific problem a customer cares about? It's called being circumstance contingent, meaning they might be looking for different solutions. So everyone's now confused. Let me give you an example. If you're a parent and your child has an ear infection, you might get on the web and say, how can I treat an ear infection? You might do some Google search. You might call a friend. You might call your mother. You might call your father. Hey, how did you treat my ear infections when I was a child? You might try a home remedy or two. You might put some alcohol in it to see if you can get the water out. You might buy swimmer's ear at the store to see if that works. So the circumstances, there's not an emergency. You don't have to do something right away. Yet if your child has a broken arm or you suspect it's broken, he falls off his bike and he comes home and the arm's swollen, or even worse, there's a bone sticking out, you're not going to go to the web and say, how do I treat a broken arm? What are the types of things we can do to treat a broken arm? You're not going to try a home remedy. You're going to run that child to the emergency room. So the type of business or the type of solution that you could provide as an entrepreneur is somewhat dependent on circumstance. What is the circumstance that the customer is in, and what is the circumstance that that customer cares about? Let's give you a different example. If you're a person with a flat tire, you are looking for an immediate solution. You are looking to call AAA or call your insurance company to see if they have roadside assistance. You need a solution right now. You're probably not going on YouTube and saying, I now have a flat tire. What do I do? How do I change it? In other words, if you were just looking for education around how to change a flat tire, meaning you were a new driver, you've gotten a new car, and you want to make sure you understand where the spare tire is located and where the jack is located and how to do it, maybe you're going to watch a how-to video when you don't have a flat tire before you even get on the road, so that you understand and know, if I get a flat tire, here's what I do. You're looking for a different solution. The solution for that might be a paid video, or it might be a paid service. But if I actually have a flat tire, I am looking for a very different solution. I am looking for someone who can fix it, someone who can solve the problem. So again, it's a circumstance contingent solution. Another one is context. If you ask a person what they did, the way we write it here is you get kind of a loose resemblance to reality. But ask them what they will do, and it's even murkier, meaning it's less reliable. And let me give you the best example of this. If someone says to me, hey, Steve, how much did you go to the gym last week? Almost all the time I answer, oh, I went 4 times. The reality is last week, I might have only went 3, maybe only 2. But in my head, I always think I'm going 4 times because I go 4 days between Monday and Friday. That's my goal. I want to make sure I'm in the gym 4 times a week at 5 a.m., Monday to Friday. But in reality, I might have only gone 3 because I had a work engagement, or maybe I only went 2 because my wife wanted to go to breakfast one day. And if you ask me what I'm going to do in the future, of course I'm going to tell you 4 times. I'm going to the gym 4 times, absolutely, won't miss a class. But the reality is I might only go once or twice, or heck, next week I'm going on vacation. I might not go at all. So in other words, asking people what they do is not near as reliable as getting context. And getting context is watching how they solve the problem. If someone didn't ask me how often I went to the gym and I did not know I was being observed and just watched me, they sat outside my house every day at 5 a.m. and said, did he go to the gym today? Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. Their data would be a lot more reliable than if they just asked me. So if you can watch how a customer solves a problem, how did the customer change his flat tire? How did the customer get all of the ice cream that dripped down the cone off of his hand? How did the customer place his order? If you can watch how they are doing things, you will get a lot more context and you will be able to find solutions and have ideas to solve problems much better than simply asking customers. So one of the big things we want to do when we're looking for ideas and looking for opportunities is we want to be observing the way people are solving their actual problems. So a small sample of watching is much more valuable than a large sample of asking. And that is the way to think about this. A small sample of watching is much more valuable than a large sample of asking. And so if you can, try to make sure you're watching for solutions. Okay, constraints. One of the time-tested paths to grow or innovate around a barrier, this article says, is do it around a constraint. And so everyone's like, well, what does that mean? Southwest Airlines. Most people know Southwest Airlines, and everybody knows that, oh, they were it's about everybody's happy that works there, and they try to create this great culture and this great atmosphere. But the constraint that Southwest Airlines actually evolved around was cost. They said, how can we get customers who would normally take a Greyhound bus to fly? And so when they went and they observed, why are people taking Greyhounds? And then they asked and they did a bunch of research, they figured out it's a cost thing. Most of them can't afford to fly. So they said, okay, the barrier we have to innovate around, the barrier that is keeping people from consuming flying is cost. How can we create a discount airline to attract people who used to ride the bus? So the way they did that was by saying, how do we eliminate as many cost things inside of planes as we can? So they only have one model of airplane. That made service a lot cheaper because they only had to keep one type of repair part. They didn't have 15 different types of engines. They didn't have 15 different types of planes. They had one type of plane. They eliminated all the seating and all of the reservation systems and all of the perks that went around that. So what they did was they looked at the existing airline business model and they said, how do we eliminate as many things as possible that are keeping people from flying? How far can we drive the cost down? And they were able to drive it down enough that they were able to attract those customers that would have normally rode a bus to now fly. If you think about Wii, everybody knows, it kind of came on the market and had a lot of press because, all of a sudden these old folks' homes were using Wii and all of this. But if I was to ask you, what barrier were they innovating around? Wii was innovating around what barrier? My son knows the answer to this because when him and I play video games, not play Wii, he just kicks my butt because I didn't play video games growing up. And the controller, the complexity of the controller is very difficult for me to get my hands, around, to try to figure out how to use. You got to press the left button, you have to press the right button, you have to press two things on the back, you have to move the toggle, you have to hold your leg a certain, there's just so many different combinations of things you have to do in a controller to actually make a video game work. We recognize this. We said, if we want family entertainment, we have to make it more simple. And so they created a simple controller, a much simpler way for games to be played. So their job was to appeal to families looking for simple entertainment. That's what they tried to do. So they innovated around, the barrier they innovated around was the complexity of a controller so that families could play together. And so now if my son and I play a video game and we play Wii, I can at least compete. On some of the games, Duck Hunter, forget it. I can, I totally kick his butt. Mario Kart, not so bad. I can drive that thing. There's not very many buttons you have to do. So we made it easy for family entertainment to happen. They innovated around the constraint that existed from the complexity of controllers. Okay, so to do this though, you have to understand why the customer's not consuming. Southwest understood that they weren't consuming because it was too expensive. We understood parents aren't playing video games because the controllers were too hard. Only once you understand why the customer's not consuming, can you innovate and come up with a way around the barrier. Okay, compensating behaviors. It's using a product in an unintended way. Let's look at Quicken. I'm sure everybody knows about Quicken. Quicken actually started off as a personal finance tool, but now it's Quicken for Business. Because what happened was Quicken came out and people were supposed to be using it for their personal finances, and as they were talking to their customers, they realized that a lot of customers were using it to do their small business books. And so they immediately pivoted and became QuickBooks for Business. So Quicken, which was initially designed 100% as a personal finance tool, pivoted and innovated and is now QuickBooks for Big Business, and it's one of the largest business accounting applications in the market today. Bubble Wrap. Bubble Wrap, and this will blow your mind, Bubble Wrap was not intended initially to be bubble wrap. It was not intended to keep things from breaking in packages. Yes, it was actually designed as textured wallpaper. Somebody built this and said this would be cool wallpaper to have texture on our walls. And that's how bubble wrap started. Kleenex, everything we blow our nose with, they were actually first put on the market, designed 100% to remove makeup. That's what they were designed to do. They were designed to remove makeup. Play-Doh. Play-Doh actually came to the market way back, like early 1900s. It was a wallpaper cleaner. It was designed because fireplaces put a lot of soot out when you had fires constantly going in your houses, and fires and kerosene lamps put out soot all over the place. And Play-Doh was something you could rub on your walls and it actually removed all the soot. It was originally considered a wallpaper cleaner. Rogaine, this hair growing medicine, it was actually put in as a high blood pressure medicine, but when it was in all of when it was going through its groups for its trials and its testing, people started realizing they were growing more hair. And so a side effect of this high blood pressure medicine was hair growth. Well, all of a sudden they pivoted and reformulated it slightly, and now it is a hair treatment medicine. Coca-Cola, as everyone knows, it was initially put on the market for headaches and addiction, had a little bit of cocaine in it way back in the day. So those are all the different compensating behaviors. So a compensating behavior is, I have something I'm using in the marketplace. I see that my customers are using it differently. Maybe I should listen to my customers and reposition and repivot whatever it is I have in the marketplace and use it differently. And then criteria. Customers look at jobs through functional, emotional, and social lenses. So quality is a relative term. In other words, what I consider good, somebody else might not consider good. What I consider a good steak, somebody else might not consider a good steak. What I consider a good customer experience, someone else might think of it as a bad customer experience. And so since it's relative, you have to understand the criteria that matters to the customer, because you have to be able to work around that. Spirit Airlines, the criteria that matters to a Spirit Airlines customer is cheap. How inexpensively can I get from point A to point B on an airplane? The seats aren't very comfortable. They're these hard plastic seats. You get no frills. They have no drinks. They have no snacks. Everything's you pay for as an addition. You don't even get bags. You have to carry your bag on, one little carry-on. After that, you pay for carry-ons. You pay for checked luggage. But it's about inexpensive travel, point A to point B, for air travelers who are not looking for a luxurious experience. Sports clips. I mean, clearly what criteria matters to somebody who goes to Sports Clips? It's how fast can my haircut be and how inexpensive can it be? I mean, I'm a Sports Clips guy. I go there because it's convenient. But what does that mean? It means 60% of the time I get a great haircut. 40% of the time my haircut's like not so good. And, I'll come home and my wife will be, ooh, you struggled in there today, huh? Got somebody who didn't really, know what she was doing. That's just the reality of it. But I'm okay with that. A, my hair grows back fast. B, the convenience of going there, having sports on while I'm sitting there, getting a little hair wash when I'm finished so all the hair doesn't come down my shirt and, make me itch all day. That to me is the convenience. And for the price, it's hard to beat. So the criteria is people who are looking for speed, availability. You don't have to make appointments, and a somewhat consistent cut. Walmart, everyone knows what that is. It's large quantities of goods at inexpensive prices. Whole Foods, they've marketed around the criteria their customers are looking for, typically, more wholesome foods, organics, a better shopping experience. And then Amazon, I mean, it's just got everything for everyone, but it's around convenience. I can shop, I can use Prime, and I can have it here typically the next day. If you think of something like soccer.com, what criteria are they looking for? Their customers go for quality shoes. My son's a big soccer player. He plays in college. If he runs around town looking for soccer shoes, there's Soccer for All, and that's about it. If you want to really find a quality leather boot, he buys everything from soccer.com because they have quality leather boots. They don't have, the hybrid leathers. I mean, they do sell the hybrid leathers, but if, what I call them hybrids or pleathers or whatever the artificial, materials are that they make shoes out of. If you want a really leather shoe, it's very hard to find at Dick's or at Academy because they're serving the mass market. And that mass market is looking for a little bit less expensive shoe, a more functional shoe. he needs a high quality shoe, soccer.com. That's the criteria they're looking for in their customers. And then Netflix, it's all about ease and convenience. It used to be a wide array of movies. Now they're actually gearing more towards their own self-curated, self-created material. So that's kind of the 5 C's of opportunity identification. And in the next video, we'll talk a little bit more about ideation and other ways that you can find ideas. So until next time, have a great day.